Imagine standing atop a scaffold of ice, 20 stories above the earth. The wind in Sochi or Pyeongchang doesn't just blow, it screams. Below you lies a slope-style course, a chaotic playground of jagged steel rails and massive kickers that look less like sports equipment and more like launch pads for space travel. You have 20 seconds to defy gravity or let the mountain break you. This isn't just about gold medals. It's about the day a group of rebellious kids from the American backcountry turned a fringe hobby into the most watched spectacle on the planet. Chapter 1. The Outcasts of the Mountain. The story of men's Olympic slopestyle doesn't begin with a starter pistol or a national anthem. It begins in the 1990s in the no snowboarding zones of Vermont and the Sierra Nevadas. Back then, if you were a snowboarder, you were a vandal. You were the knuckle dragger ruining the pristine moguls of the elite skiers. But while the world looked down on them, a subculture was hardening. These athletes weren't training in state-of-the-art gyms. They were jumping over frozen picnic tables and sliding down handrails in suburban parking lots. This street DNA would eventually become the backbone of slopestyle. Chapter 2. Sochi 2014, The Birth of a Legend. The year is 2014. The world is watching Sochi, Russia. The Russian government had spent $50 billion to build a winter wonderland, but the slopestyle course was a nightmare. It was too big, too fast, and dangerous. Shaun White, the king of the halfpipe, looked at the course and walked away, citing safety concerns. The American hopes rested on a kid from Silverthorne, Colorado, named Sage Kotzenberg. Sage didn't look like a traditional Olympian. He didn't have a coach in a headset or a rigid diet. He ate onion rings for breakfast and spoke in a dialect of stoked and rad. While the Norwegian and Canadian riders were practicing triple corks, highly technical robotic rotations, Sage decided to do something weird. Chapter 3. The Holy Grail of Style. On his final run, Sage Kotzenberg did something the judges hadn't seen in years. He performed a holy crail. It wasn't the most rotations ever seen, but it was art. He grabbed his board behind his back, legs tweaked in a way that defied skeletal limits, and floated. When he landed, the sport changed forever. The outsider had won the first ever Olympic gold in slopestyle. He proved to the USA and the world that snowboarding wasn't just about how many times you could spin, it was about how much soul you could put into the flight. Chapter 4. Pyeongchang and the Miracle of 17-year-old Red Gerard. Fast forward to 2018. The stakes had tripled. The Canadians, Max Parrott and Mark McMorris, were landing triple cork 1620s, 4.5 rotations in the air while flipping 3 times. Enter Redmond Gerard. The morning of the finals, Red was the definition of an American teenager. He had stayed up late watching Netflix, lost his puffy team jacket, and overslept. He had to be jolted awake, rushed to the mountain, and borrowed a jacket from his teammate. He was in 11th place after 2 runs. He had 1 shot left. As he stood at the top of the South Korean course, the wind was gusting at 30 miles per hour. Most riders were playing it safe. Red didn't. He took a unique line through the rails, the creative route, and then launched a backside triple cork 1440 on the final jump. The score, 87.16. The kid who lost his jacket was now the youngest American to win winter gold since 1928. The USA went wild. Slopestyle wasn't just a sport anymore. It was an American identity. Rifle marksmanship combined with sheer physical prowess in skiing, Arya was no ordinary athlete. He was a former U.S. Navy marksman. His lungs were as hard as iron. The height of Anthal's was 1,600 meters above sea level. Where breathing in thin air is difficult, Arya had to aim for a steady target after skiing 5 kilometers with her heart rate down. A snowstorm started on the day of the finals. Visibility was near zero. Favorite athletes from Norway and Germany were missing one after another. But when Arya picked up the rifle, the American audience saw a strange sight. He was as steady as a rock in the midst of the storm. Every shot hit the target. When he reached the finish line, his body was covered in snow, but in his hands was the first gold medal in biathlon history for America. The NBC commentator was shouting, "She didn't just beat the clock, she tamed the storm." Chapter 9. The Colosseum of Snow. Cortina's Bobsled Rebirth. Cortina d'Ampezzo, the city returned to the main stage of the Olympics after 1956. This time, the attraction here was the newly renovated Eugenio Monti track. It is one of the fastest and most dangerous bobsled tracks in the world. It was a personal battle for Team USA. They missed out on a medal by just a few milliseconds in Beijing 4 years ago. This time, their pilot was a former Texas football player, Marcus Jordan. Marcus knew he would have to fight to the death to win this track. As the bobsled hurtled down the hill at 130 kilometers per hour, the camera could only see a blur of white and blue. The G-force at every turn was crushing the athletes' bodies. Marcus's sled almost flipped over on the last bend, but he kept control with the strength of his muscular arms. When they crossed the finish line, the time difference was just 0.01 seconds. For the USA, this gold medal was a triumph of courage. Chapter 10. The Artificial Intelligence Revolution. The 2026 Olympics will be remembered not only for the games, but also for the technology. AI judging technology was used for the first time in Milan's ice rinks. In events like figure skating and snowboarding, where human judgment was accused of bias, AI was analyzing every movement with millimeter precision. As American snowboard legend Chloe Kim delivered the best ride of her last Olympic career, the AI screen displayed her height, rotation speed, and landing balance in real-time graphics. Viewers could sit at home and watch how science meets art. When Chloe Kim won her 3rd gold medal, it was not just an athlete's triumph, but a technologically recognized excellence. Chapter 11. The Shadow of the Crimson King. In the early 2010s, Shaun White, known globally as the Flying Tomato, was more than a snowboarder. He was a multinational corporation. He had the video games, the clothing lines, and the target on his back. While he was the undisputed king of the halfpipe, slopestyle was his white whale. The USA audience loved a crossover. They wanted to see if the greatest pipe rider in history could transition to the Wild West of the slopestyle course. In the lead-up to Sochi 2014, the pressure was suffocating. NBC had built their entire primetime marketing campaign around White winning 2 gold medals in 2 different disciplines. But slopestyle is a cruel mistress. It requires a different kind of pop. In the pipe, you use the transition to generate speed. In slopestyle, you have to fight the flat bottom impact of a 60-foot drop. During practice, White took a terrifying slam on the rails. He looked at the massive triple jumps, the very ones that would eventually crown Sage Kotzenberg, and made a choice that shocked the nation. He pulled out. The king had blinked. But in his absence, a vacuum was created, and the young guns rushed in to fill it. This moment marked the end of the solo superstar era and the beginning of the Wolfpack era of American snowboarding. Chapter 12. The Brotherhood of the Van. To understand the 50,000-word reality of this sport, you have to look past the Olympic Village. You have to look at the Project Detour vans. While the elite skiers were staying in 5-star hotels with physical therapists, the American slopestyle team was often a group of teenagers living out of renovated Ford Econolines. They parked in the lots of Mammoth Mountain and Breckenridge, cooking ramen on camping stoves and filming each other on iPhones. This vagabond culture is why the USA remains dominant. There's an unspoken rule in slopestyle. If your friend lands a trick, you have to land it better. This isn't coached, it's tribal. In the 2020s, riders like Dusty Henriksen and Luke Winkelmann began a push-pull dynamic. They would spend 8 hours a day on the T-bar lift, hitting the same rail 300 times until their shins bled. They weren't training for the Olympics, they were training for each other's respect. By the time they reached the Olympic qualifiers, the actual competition felt easier compared to the sessions back home. Chapter 14. The Anatomy of a Crash, the Physics of Failure. We talk about the gold, but we must talk about the ice. At the speeds required for slopestyle, the snow isn't fluffy powder, it is blue ice, chemically treated and water-injected to be as hard as a sidewalk. When a rider scorpions, lands on their chest while their board whips over their head to hit them in the back of the helmet, the force is equivalent to a low-speed car accident. In the 2022 Beijing qualifiers, the world held its breath as several top-tier riders were carted off on sleds. The wind was a crosstail, the most dangerous kind. It pushes the rider sideways in mid-air. To survive, the athlete must use their arms like gyroscopes. L equals I times omega is the law of the land. By pulling their arms in tight,